Hi everyone, welcome back to Wholesome Path. I'm Dr. Oyugi. In today's video, we'll look at 5 things that you can do to decrease your risk of non-communicable diseases. Non-communicable diseases are those which are not spread from person to person, unlike communicable diseases like infections which can be transmitted from person to person, including the COVID-19 virus and the resultant respiratory disease. So the WHO has listed 10 leading causes of death worldwide, and it's not surprising that majority of them are actually non-communicable diseases. It therefore follows that if you can reduce your risk of non-communicable diseases, you can help to get yourself out of the group of the leading causes of death and probably enjoy a more healthy lifestyle for a longer duration. So I'll just pull up the material from the WHO. This from their website, the last was published in 2019. And it was grouped as what are the total, in terms of globally, what are the 10 leading causes of death? Then down to low and middle income countries, what are the 10 leading causes of death? And then in high income countries, what are the 10 leading causes of death? So as Kenyans or as Africans, we do have both income spectrums represented. So there are people, even though they're in a low resource country, their financial ability and how they live their life simulates what's in a high income countries. So if you might be in Kenya, but your risks profile parallel those who are from a high income country. So we'll just go through them and then have a brief discussion on the same. The first one is ischemic heart disease. We have stroke, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, lower respiratory tract infections, neonatal conditions, tracheal and lung cancers, Alzheimer's and other dementias, diarrheal diseases. Yes, people are dying from diarrhea, diabetes mellitus, and kidney diseases. So from this list of 10 leading causes of death, I'll count the ones that are non-communicable. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of the 10 leading causes of death in the world, as published by the WHO, are non-communicable diseases. That is generally. Now, when we come to back down to our setting, which is leading causes of death in low-income countries like Kenya, where we are recording from, there will be a bit of variations. We will tend to die more from infections than from other things, although this dynamic is changing as people are moving up in their economic ladder. So as per that study at that time, neonatal conditions, respiratory infections were the leading cause in the low-income countries. However, ischemic heart disease, stroke had come up, and they were at number 3 and 4 in terms of leading causes of death. And of course, we know in low-income countries, especially in Africa where we come from, diarrhea, malaria, tuberculosis, HIV and AIDS feature prominently, and the WHO was able to capture that. Also road injury, because the traffic adherence to traffic rules is quite poor in low resource countries, and cirrhosis of the liver is the last one. Now in the middle and high income countries, which includes some people even in Africa and in Asia, you might be in a poor country but living a life that is middle or high income, and therefore you're exposed to the same risks. Now for the high income individuals or high income countries, ischemic heart disease, stroke, chronic lung disease, and lung cancers ranked as the top 4 causes of death. So what is the point of all this? That there are many things that are preventable that actually contribute a lot to human death. And in that assessment, common risk factors were determined that are shared in all these non-communicable diseases, which if we work on, we can lower our risk of death from such diseases. I will share the common risk factors. They are there even in the WHO website, but I will share from this, which is the national guidelines for our country, Kenya, on cardiovascular diseases, which, as you have seen, are actually number 1 and 2 as leading causes of death. So the number 1 intervention is avoidance of alcohol. So alcohol has been shown in study that it is a leading contributor to cardiovascular diseases when it comes to ischemic heart disease, heart failure, stroke, and other vascular diseases. And therefore, the number 1, one of the interventions given is avoidance of alcohol. The number 2 intervention is avoidance of all forms of tobacco. So tobacco is known to have inflammatory effects on our blood vessels. So inflammation of the blood vessels and other consequent mechanisms, some not very clearly understood, result in increased risk of heart diseases, other cardiovascular diseases like stroke. Therefore, avoidance of any form of tobacco will result in you lowering your risk factor for communicable diseases. The third intervention that is given is a daily adequate exercise. Daily adequate physical exercise. So the adequacy of your physical exercise refers to how much does it drive your cardiovascular system. Therefore, you have to sweat during your exercise, you have to record increased heart rates, increased breathing rates, and that is when the exercise counts. This is to say, a stroll for 30 minutes in the evening will not count as physical exercise. So the physical exercise has to be adequate. Adequacy refers to how much it will stimulate your cardiovascular system. So the recommended, for example, for someone who wants to walk, would be 30 minutes brisk walking every day. Where brisk walking implies that you will get tired, you will sweat, your heart rate will go up. That is the exercise that will count as adequate. So that's a simple intervention, but it has been listed as part of the top 5 interventions that you can do to lower your cardiovascular risk. So this is what is recorded in our guidelines. Participate in at least 30 minutes of moderate intensity dynamic aerobic exercise. This is walking, jogging, cycling, or swimming on 5 to 7 days a week. Okay? Number 4 is consumption of a healthy diet. So there we have to describe what a healthy diet is. Okay? As determined by the scientific studies now, which we will put some links in the description, you can look at them. A healthy diet consists of high in vegetables, low fat dairy products, dietary and soluble fiber, whole grains, proteins from plants, reducing your saturated fat and cholesterol, and eating fresh fruits. Also, you are to avoid added salt or highly salted foods. Okay, so that generally excludes all of your processed food products. What you get that are very high in sodium, like the meat products that are highly processed, are usually very high in sodium. So they say avoid adding salt or avoid any food that has high salt in it. Avoid saturated fats and cholesterol. Eat more of fresh fruits. Eat more of protein from plant sources, whole grains, and dietary and soluble fiber. So that is just a general overview. I know we'll go down to the specifics of diet, which my colleague Dr. Nyatigo will take us through in another session. And the number 5 intervention is avoid obesity. Obesity is a chronic inflammatory state, and therefore it is actually listed as a disease. So if you are obese, kindly consider yourself to be sick and unwell, because your body is under a state of chronic inflammation. And this chronic inflammation is one of the parts that is being studied as to a major risk factor for developing cancer in the system. Having a state of chronic inflammation at a low level. Okay, a low frequency chronic inflammatory state. So obesity is actually a disease, and the management or reversal of obesity will decrease your risk factors for the non-communicable diseases that we've mentioned. So remember the 5. Avoid alcohol, avoid tobacco, adequate physical exercise on 5 to 7 days of the week, eat a healthy diet as outlined, which basically drops down to having a simple diet, like what our grandparents used to eat, and not all the modified things that we take today. And lastly, reverse obesity if you are currently obese, and avoid obesity if you are not obese. I'll make another comment just on the leading causes of death, especially in low-income countries, because respiratory infections feature prominently. They're actually listed as number 5 in low-income countries. Diarrheal diseases also feature prominently. So the reason I bring up respiratory diseases is that we want to discourage over-the-counter use of antibiotics. Here I have with me antibiotic guidelines, which are used in our hospital setting that guide the use of antibiotics. And we found that in low-income countries where people can access antibiotics over the counter, we have higher rates of antibiotic resistance. And this means that you may get an infection for which there is no antibiotic that will be available to treat you. And as you can see, respiratory infections feature prominently as a leading cause of death, featuring as number 5 in low-resource countries. Therefore, our advice to you is that avoid use of over-the-counter antibiotics. If you feel unwell and you have features of an infection, kindly see a qualified medical practitioner in order to get the way forward. And I would mention specifically upper respiratory tract infections, which we call sore throats. Most of them are actually viral in nature, and there is no need of use of antibiotics, as this only creates resistance. The next is sinusitis, which gives chronic headaches and maybe a runny nose. Some of them are also viral in nature, and you don't need to use an antibiotic. Therefore, see your doctor in order to get guidance on antibiotic use and help lower antibiotic resistance, so that you can change this listing of having respiratory infections as a leading cause of death. Lastly, I will highlight diarrheal diseases. Many people die from diarrhea, and it usually stems from not taking the diarrhea seriously. Someone diarrheas in the house for 2 to 3 days before eventually going to hospital, and sometimes it is too late to reverse the course. It is worse in children who have less threshold of tolerance, but it also occurs in adults. Diarrhea will deplete your electrolytes, will deplete your fluid, your volume in your circulation, and therefore supply of oxygen, nutrients, and whatever in the system, and will lead in organ failure. So when your fluid volume is depleted, the end result will be organ failure and other consequences of electrolyte imbalances. So at the very least, when you're having diarrhea, keep yourself hydrated. Consider having oral rehydration salts in your house, which you can take to replace your electrolytes and fluids as diarrhea is ongoing. And if diarrhea is persistent, seek urgent medical care. So that's it, guys, for this video. We've highlighted the 5 lifestyle modifications that you can do to alter your risk factor. This is for non-communicable diseases. And we've highlighted 2 specific things that arise in the low-income countries, which is diarrheal diseases and respiratory tract infections, and how to try and mitigate against them. I hope this was beneficial for you. See you in the next video. Hi guys, thanks for visiting our YouTube channel. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. And don't forget to visit our website, wholesomepath.org, in order to find more helpful articles, and in order to get a personalized experience, book an appointment, share with us your personal issue in order to get a solution.